What's going on, everybody? Really quick before we get into today's episode, we got a few housekeeping things I want to announce to you guys really quickly before we move on. First announcement, we're going to be switching to bi-weekly episodes that release on Saturday mornings. So moving forward, just got the regular season coming up for Jordan, got a little bit of a busy season for me ahead. Going to be focusing on some other things within the podcast rather than just the full episode. So we're switching to bi-weekly episodes that release on Saturdays. So that is the first announcement. Next on that, we are going to be doing some more impromptu reactions of live things that happen throughout the season. So if you hear big basketball news in the NBA or college or whatever it may be, we're going to be doing a little bit more quick reaction videos to those that are a little bit outside of the podcast. So my biggest suggestion to you would be go on to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, which are the three different social media platforms that we're on, and go ahead and hit that search bar and go to at player the number 2 coach pod. Again, that's player 2 coach pod, where you can find all of our social media at. So we're just going to be putting out a lot more social media content, whether that be clips from the podcast itself or reaction to different stuff that happens throughout the week, say a little bit more relevant in that sense. So that's kind of where we're going to be shifting our minds to a little bit. Let's see what else. Before we get into the podcast, just want to let you know we had a little bit of an interruption where we ran a little bit longer than we thought. Came up a little bit too close to Jordan's practice, and obviously he's got to be there on time and prepared, so we had to kind of cut it in the middle. And then when we came back, unfortunately, my mic was not plugged in all the way. So you get my AirPod audio, which isn't the best. It's not terrible, but it's not the best. Let's just say that. So be prepared for that for the second half of this episode. Apologies for that. It won't happen again. But yeah, looking forward to this episode. This we recorded this at the beginning of last week, the beginning of the NBA tip off to the regular season. So we didn't get to really break all that stuff down. We're gonna have a lot of reaction, a lot of different stuff coming up for the next episode for the what we see in the first week that happened. But yeah, let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to the Player to Coach podcast. This is episode 21. I'm your host, Josh Hill, and alongside me have my good friend, former teammate, and now co-host, Jordan Alexander. As you can see, Jordan's rocking it out in the car again today, got his coaching gear on, ready to go after the podcast. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing good. Yeah, just I'm in the parking lot right now before I head in, get ready for practice here. So had a little bit of time to spare and thought this would be a good topic to be able to converse a little bit about today.
For sure. So this will be coming out Friday. So the first few games of the regular season, the NBA will have already happened. First night to kick off the NBA season, we got Sixers versus Celtics, and then we have Lakers versus Warriors. Both, good matchups to kind of get everything all kicked off. We'll be excited to see what the result of those are by the time this episode goes ahead and drops. But a few things that wanted to wrap up kind of from our previous week's episode. So we talked a lot about, we mainly only talked about Draymond punching his teammate. And then so the aftermath of that, fined and not suspended, which was fascinating. They had a really sick dap up before their game. So it appears that all was good. And then they just went ahead and signed Jordan Poole for 140 million. And then this is kind of a sidebar, but they also paid Andrew Wiggins, gave him the extension to 109 million. So it appears that all is good over in Golden State. I don't know if you have any immediate thoughts off of that, and kind of an interesting punishment. Not only fining him for a undisclosed amount and then not suspending him. Kind of fascinating, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was pretty fascinated by it too, but just talking with like a couple people in my circle a little bit about it, and when you think about it, I think it makes sense because this was up to the organization, to the Warriors to decide. It wasn't up to the NBA. I think if we were to imagine, and I know we talked about this, imagine if the video wasn't leaked, we would have no idea what the extent of it was, if that makes sense. So because the video was out there, there was almost like this added pressure to see like what the Warriors would do as far as a suspension or what that looks like. I think what they decided to do kind of just shows that they're trying to keep things together to see if they can go win a title this season. So, um, obviously, Draymond being not a part of that potentially, if he was to be suspended, that changes them completely and probably actually takes them out of the type of contention that they have with him. So, obviously, they're just trying to hold it together. Who knows if he'll be back like in the future? But I don't think they're really concerned about that right at this very second. Um, but yeah, it's pretty telling. Some of it has to do with too what type of culture you have within an organization. Obviously, we don't know really ultimately how cool Jordan Poole and Draymond are prior to the fight or even now. Um, but the culture is a winning culture. And so maybe it's easier for them to piece things back together rather than a disgruntled bunch or a team without a culture, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, winning cures all. I think that's pretty evident as you look across the league and every different sport as well. Winning cures all. I'm curious to know how much of I mean, most likely the Jordan Poole contract had nothing to do with him getting hit, and yeah, from the outside looking in, you wouldn't just fine and not suspend somebody that you weren't confident in that decision, especially with the video being released. You would think that would add a little bit more pressure on there.
right.
The only thing I'm curious about is if obviously all we're ever going to hear is that obviously they've made up, that it's been addressed to the team and all that. I wonder if Jordan was maybe expecting a little bit more of a punishment, and it was like, dang, dude, I got clocked by my own teammate, and you didn't even get suspended for a game when you got plenty of other things that players get suspended for. But obviously that's outside looking in, and we can only speculate and kind of go from there. Some other big news: TNT actually just re-signed the big four of Chuck, Shaq, Kenny, and Ernie for another 10-year contract, which is huge. I'm surprised that it was 10 years. First of all, I mean, no offense to those guys, but they're getting up there in age. There's been a few different interviews where Chuck has even talked about, like, I don't know how much longer I even want to be on TV, but I mean, that's great for basketball fans. It's great for sports fans to get another 10 years of those four because they're electric. Honestly, they're great.
For sure. Yeah, that's exciting. That's my favorite show on TV. It's not even close, in my opinion, how it compares to other NBA related TV shows. I think it's far and away the best one. So, yeah, watch it obviously when it's on couple times a week, especially on Thursday nights. And yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited for this next week just so I can watch that again
For
and
sure.
also the games, but just
For
watch that
sure.
again.
One of the most anticipated matchups every year is, Shaq and Chuck. It's one of the best things ever. There's always something viral happening with those two. It's always great. So, congrats the basketball world on getting another 10 years of those guys. Some other major news, not really. I picked Luca as my first pick in the my first year of basketball fantasy. Never done it before. Just figured it's too many games to keep track of and pay attention to for guys sitting on second and back to backs and injuries and all that stuff. So this is the first year of doing it, and to show my respect and how much I value Luca, I picked him with my number 4 pick. So I feel good about that one. Which will kind of lead into a different conversation later about Luca, but I feel solid about my team. I feel really good about it, especially with it being led by Luca, who is a very high usage and obviously the center point of the Mavericks this year. So that's pretty big.
True.
Do you play basketball fantasy? Do you do that at all?
I do not know. I think I've played once before, but no, I'm heavily involved in fantasy football, uh, like in 3 leagues currently, and it's not going great this year. But I don't play fantasy basketball now. It's too many games. They play every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's interesting. Obviously, we're not going to talk about this too much longer, but this was interesting. You pick, like, you have a week long um like worth of games to choose from. So like this first week, I think there's like 2 games that the Mavericks have. I get to choose either the first or second game to like record Luca's points. So there's like 20 like fantasy matchups total in the regular season, then 2 postseason matchups. But it's like you pick which game of the week that you want to record their points off of for that week. It's fascinating. Makes it a little bit easier than having to pay attention to 82 games of however many guys you get on a roster, which is pretty insane. But that was my big
Yeah.
hesitation of not doing it. Just don't have the time. But hey, I've got Luca and ready to go take over the world. All right. One of the major things I want to get into is obviously some different rankings and predictions for this year. The big one that I had seen was actually an NBA listing of the top 5 power rankings in the NBA right now. Kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. I'm just gonna go ahead and read right through and let you go ahead and take it away from there. So at 1 we have the Warriors, 2 we have the Bucks, Celtics at 3, Suns at 4, and then the Clippers at 5. Uh,
Mm.
so that is the top 5 power rankings. Run through it one more time. We got Warriors, Bucks, Celtics, Suns, and then Clippers.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty accurate list. I think the only one team that I would throw in there right now at the beginning of the season, if they were fully healthy, would be the Nuggets. Obviously, I think with Murray coming back, I think they should be in the top 5. Um, just because the Clippers haven't really like I don't know. This is a new Clippers, right? With John Wall, they're a little bit
Yeah.
deeper. Um, they are very talented, obviously. I just think the Nuggets are kind of in that flex of like, should they be in top 5? I guess we'll see. But that's one of my teams to watch too, and I know we'll kind of get into that. But yeah, I would say that's probably a pretty accurate top 5. I don't think there's really any too much of a debate. Um, you kind of wonder how the Nets will fare when they're healthy um, and at full strength, which, as of right now, it looks like they're going to be. So, yeah, I guess we'll kind of see. I feel like the NBA has potential to um, be pretty open for who's going to make the finals this year. Um, Obviously, I think the Warriors are probably they're the favorite right now. But behind them, I feel like anyone can really make it. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out of the East this year. Do the Celtics run it back? You could argue that they got even better this offseason, but now they don't have their head coach. So um, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only team that surprised me was the Clippers. I think if you're looking at this list of teams and assume the best to happen, I think you can throw them in there. But not that Kawhi is not great or anything, but um, you usually don't see the same type of player after really prolonged injury like the one that he had. I mean, and then also John Wall's kind of a question mark and an X factor as well. Not that they don't have a solid team, but I mean, there's some really good teams in the league, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it is a little bit bold to put them at 5. I wouldn't put it past them to end up there by the end of the season. I'm also curious about the Suns. I think from a like on paper standpoint, like valid to have them in there. They got waxed in the playoffs last year, though. I wonder how much of that plays into this. Obviously it's a whole new season, and you just like any team, like you learn and you grow from those experiences. So maybe that's just going to put a type of taste in their mouth that they're never going to forget, and they're going to look completely different attitude and all that stuff. But man, they got dismantled by a Mavericks team who I think got better in the offseason. Added a few pieces. I I might even venture to put the Mavericks in this as well. Obviously the Nets are on top of my mind for getting into here. It'll be interesting because they have so many different pieces coming together at once. Like
right.
so many different things that happened over this offseason. Like obviously Kyrie being able to play full time, supposedly Ben Simmons being fully healthy, supposedly Kevin Durant wanting out and then buying back in over the offseason. They added some good pieces though. They have a few guys that are going to be out for a while that are hurt, but I mean, add a guy like Royce O'Neal from Utah, who's a great 3 and D guy, and then also Markieff Morris, who uh, I feel like the Morris brothers are kind of like they bounce all over the league, but they always bring a positive impact. So that I mean, the Nets are dangerous as well, but I think there's just too many question marks. Is probably why they're outside of that top five.
Yeah, I agree. I can't dispute that. I think that's true. I think they kind of have to prove themselves right now. Um, but yeah, I feel like that kind of leads us into maybe like teams to watch. Um, I briefly mentioned the Nuggets. I mean, think about it. They got Caldwell Pope. They added him. Porter Jr. should be back, fully healthy. Jamal Murray is going to be back, and they have arguably, the best player in the NBA. People would argue. I don't think he's number one, but Jokic is right up there. So, if they're healthy, the Nuggets have the depth and the talent, I think, to hang with anyone. They just haven't been able to prove themselves in the playoffs. They really haven't. And so, yeah, they're one of my teams to watch. Should be really interesting. And then kind of one of like the outsiders looking in the Western Conference is the Pelicans. I know we've talked about them a lot on here, but them getting Zion back, adding McCollum last year, Ingram's been playing really well the last couple seasons. Um, they'll be interesting to kind of be one of those teams. Are they middle of the pack in the West? Can they bump up there? They're going to kind of be one of the last teams in again. So um, yeah, those are my two out of the Western Conference that are um, people to watch or teams to watch, other outside the norm, right? I feel like people are gonna have to beat the Warriors. Um, I feel like the West is theirs to lose at this point. Um, but yeah, what do you think? What about the Western Conference?
Yeah, I agree with you there. Man, the Pelicans, they seem dangerous to me. I think the only thing kind of standing in their way of is just kind of gelling because obviously Zion's going to be a massive piece in how they play and their philosophy and everything, and just with him being not a part of that playoff push last year, adding McCollum during that. And obviously that's what the offseason and preseason is for, but there's nothing like actual regular season play. And then, going through a tough stretch and, obviously stuff that we've talked about before on the podcast, where you don't really know your team until they go through some adversity. So they look really good on paper and they look really dangerous. And they're kind of in that in-betweener kind of a stage where like they have a lot of guys who are like almost superstars, but not like they're too young or too inexperienced to be, any lower than that. So they're kind of in that sweet spot of like they have a real chance to really prove themselves as a staple in the NBA this year. But yeah,
Yeah,
I see them kind of finishing up in that maybe that 5 seed is kind of where I see them falling in the West. But yeah, really dangerous. And yeah, I mean, you said it with the Nuggets. They haven't necessarily added a ton of pieces, but they've just been so injury prone, like one player to the next every other year. And Jokic has been kind of the only one that has stayed a staple for them, primarily because of health. But it will be interesting to see how those all gel together, kind of like where I was talking about the Pelicans, where even if you're getting guys back off of injury, it changes
right.
things, changes philosophy, changes a lot. So, what about in the East? Who are some of your sleepers or some of your teams to watch that aren't, obviously the Bucks and the Celtics to go ahead and run it back?
Yeah, yeah. Teams to watch. I think Philadelphia. Adding PJ Tucker. Does Harden have a better year this year? They also added D'Anthony Melton. Um, I think they're just like trying to, get to what they've been hoping for a while. Um, bold prediction. I think they can make the Eastern Conference Finals. With that being said, they're going to have to go through Milwaukee or Boston or even Brooklyn. Um, but they've been, Embiid's been hurt in the past before too. So it's kind of just one of those things of like, can they stay healthy? And are these additional pieces that they're adding, are they enough to get them over the hump? Um, they automatically get better defensively with PJ Tucker. Wherever he goes over the last 5 or 6 years, they get better. And so it's hard to argue against that. And he was a running mate with Harden in Houston, right? Now they're a few years older. Um, PJ Tucker has, had a lot of success since then. Can they become a real contender? I guess we'll see. And then the other one, I was trying to decide between two other teams, and I decided to go with the Cavs. Um, they showed a lot of young potential last season, and now they're adding Donovan Mitchell, who we have talked about on this pod before about is he an actual NBA superstar? And I don't think that he is in that top tier of superstar in the NBA. But they're young and they're exciting and they have a lot of good talent. And they made things interesting in the Eastern Conference last season. So um, I think that they'll be kind of one of those middle of the pack playoff teams this year. But can they take a team to 5 or 6 games in the first round, or can they squeeze out a win? Win the first round series and get to the second round of the playoffs. So um, that's kind of you know those are my two teams. I wanted to throw in one other team, but I kind of want to see if you mentioned them.
This one is a little bit of a, I wouldn't say cop out answer, but I think a team that has kind of underperformed that I think is going to really um to change that this year is Miami. And I know they're kind of in that 3 to 4 range already, so they're not really a sleeper by any means. But I just think after so many years of a pretty similar result of like, hey, we should be there, and they kind of fall a little bit short once they kind of get down to the nitty gritty. Who's going to actually get to the finals is going to be, um, I think there's just going to be a little bit of a mentality change, and I think you're just going to see a little bit of a different version of Miami. Obviously, they have a really long and proud tradition of Heat culture and all that stuff, and it's going to look very similar in that sense. But I think we mentioned this last year, and a lot of other people did as well. That Miami's kind of like that. Hey, yeah, they're really good and they're going to be there, but no one picks them to win. Like
Right.
usually it's somebody else. I'd put them in there, and then I'm interested to watch Toronto this year.
Hmm.
I think Scotty Barnes, yeah, I mean, he already showed that he's gonna be in the league for a long time. Last year, and kind of his defensive ability mixed with how smooth and fluid and aggressive he is on the offensive side as well. I think he's a superstar in the making, along with a lot of other good pieces on that team that I think could surprise a few people this year. They've had a lot of turnover since they won their championship several years ago. But there's just a lot of good fitting pieces on that team where I think that they could scare a few people if you really let them gel, and don't give them too much of a shot. And I also really like your Cleveland pick, that they have so many great players. They have so many bigs as well. That's what's
Mhm.
fascinating is you got a guy like Evan Mobley who is just a complete freak, but man, you look at that roster and you're like, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be in the mix, other than that
Right.
super elite status player, or even just like a little bit of a history of success with them, are really the only things that you kind of squint at with that team. But they look dangerous as well. Who is the team that you were thinking of?
Atlanta, strictly for the fact that they added DeJounte Murray. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't think that they're a contender by any means, and I don't think they're a threat to even like come close to winning the East or anything like that. But I am interested to see if they like actually have dramatic improvement at all, and just see how that team clicks in a full regular season because now you have Murray and Trey Young in the backcourt who are completely different types of point guards.
For sure.
And so they, on paper, you would think that they'd be able to bounce off of each other a little bit because their styles are so different. So that'll be exciting. I'm just thinking about it. I want to throw one other team out there back from the Western Conference, um, of like we have question marks about, and that's the Timberwolves. Obviously, adding
Yeah.
Gobert. Um, I know we talked about this before of like how is that going to click with, having a true center on the team that isn't much of an offensive threat along with Carl Anthony Towns. Um, I think that they are good. I think that that's going to be exciting. But you're just kind of interested to see where they're at. Like all these teams we're talking about that are sleepers, you don't actually feel like they have an actual shot to win their conference. Like I don't feel like Cleveland does.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the Timberwolves do. Um, but they're still going to be really interesting to watch. And I feel like a successful season from like our perspective for them would to like be in the playoffs and maybe win the first round. Obviously, they're going to have higher expectations, but um, I just don't think this isn't going to be a year where like the top dogs necessarily fall off. Um, behind the Warriors, behind the Bucks and the Celtics. I feel like those three teams are kind of set in stone. It's just like who's going to fall in and the 2, 3, and 4 seed, and who's going to fall in the 5 and 6 seed in the East, and
Yeah.
all of that. So should be interesting. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. It's you're right. It is kind of a like who do we think could knock off one of the big dogs early in the playoffs and then lose in the second round? Like that's a good sleeper pick. Kind of a justification there of like they're not going to win it all, but I could see Minnesota taking out one of the big dogs in the West early and then not winning their second round. Like they're a team that obviously can cause a lot of problems, but I mean, obviously, it'll have a lot to do with how they played this year and getting to,
Right.
letting our opinions evolve over the course of the season. But I'm not picking them to go win it all by any means. And I mean, I'm not predicting Toronto to win. That'd be kind of wild
For
if they
sure.
did. But
Be bold.
that'd be not my
You'd
prediction at all.
you'd win a
Because
lot of money if you made that bet.
I probably would. Speaking of making a lot of money and putting bets down, um, little transition there. I pulled up some of the sports books odds for different awards for this season, so I'm going to run through those real quick,
Mm,
kind of give our thoughts on each one, and probably wrap this thing up and get out of here. Uh, so the first one we have a regular season MVP award. We have Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, Kevin Durant, then John Morant. Um, I don't think any surprises there. Me personally, I'm going Luca. I think he's had enough. Kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier about somebody else, but I think he's just had a few years of, hey, you're almost there, but you're not really there yet. I think he really does take the leap this year and makes a full stamp of, yeah, I'm that dude, and I'm someone to be reckoned with, and everything runs through him. I mean,
yeah.
the MVP award is so interesting because it's a balance of, is your team successful, then are you successful as well, and how do those kind of mend with each other? I mean,
Right.
will we ever get to see a perfect balance relationship when it comes to whoever wins it? Probably not, but I think he fits that mold of, he's in the right team situation to win it, and then he's also ready to take that step as well.
Yeah. Luke is my pick too. I also think he has the best odds, right?
Yeah, at
Like that was
500.
in order.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think he's definitely my favorite to win it. I do have a question mark though, just because Embiid was so close to winning it last year.
Mm.
Does he does he come close again? You know what I mean? Like, you know how sometimes like you have like the best season in your career, he still didn't win. Does he win the MVP the next year with a little bit worse of a season? Like, is it that type of situation? Um, I'm not picking him to win it necessarily, but I think his is strictly based off of the Sixers' success this season. His odds too. Luke is going to fill up the stat sheet. He has the ball all the time. Same with Embiid, but I feel like more so for Joel, it's going to be like, are the Sixers good? Um, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think the big question mark with Embiid is, I mean, it always has and probably always will, is his health. I mean, early last year he was a front runner for like the first quarter of the season because he came out hot and was just I mean, when he's healthy, he's dominant, like
for sure.
he get 27 and 15 every game, and will get, 5 or 6 assists just cuz everyone has to send doubles all the time because you can't stop him.
Right.
So he's a stat machine in that sense, but if he misses any time, that hurts a lot. Um Even if they do remain successful, and it's almost a little bit of a hindrance if they continue to play well without you. Um, but I mean, yeah, I think unfortunately, kind of what you were saying about having a guy not win it the year before and it be a little bit of a, um, what's the word? But like the voters like kind of feel bad for him or whatever, like, oh, like he
Right.
deserves it this year because he didn't win it last year. I don't. If
Right.
it's anywhere close, Giannis and Jokic aren't going to win it because they both have won it 2 times already, and they're always gonna be in the
Right.
mix. So if there's anybody else level with them or even close, I think they give the nudge to somebody else, which is weird.
That's
I
what I'm
don't know how.
saying.
Yeah,
Like if Giannis or Jokic are gonna win, they're gonna have to have like literally their best seasons ever
yeah, it's gonna
because
have
they've
to be
already
really,
won it.
really blatant that they should win it.
Otherwise, it's gonna go to someone who hasn't. I feel like that's this type of year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next we have, rookie of the year. We have Paulo, obviously number 1, but then we have Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivey, Benedict Mathurin. I apologize if that is not how you say your last name. Jabari Smith, and then Jalen Williams. I really am gonna try not to just pick whoever's the biggest odds, but I think Paulo wins it this year. He's he's proven to he looks very, very comfortable already.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that's gonna hold him back would be if Orlando really struggles, which has kind of been their thing. But if they have any amount of success compared to what they've had in the past, I think that's just going to expedite his quote unquote rookie value. So I think he's kind of set up for it. Along with it, he has a really talented team around him. But if he's that's kind of a thing with younger teams. That it's kind of happening with the Rockets right now is who is their guy. It simplifies a lot of things if you have one dude to run things through, even if you don't. If you don't exactly see that in the stat sheet every day, it just makes more sense to kind of run it through somebody. I think it's clear that it's Paula down in Orlando, and I think it's just going to help his production and even just the perspective outside looking in that organization.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I feel like it's something he could just run away with this year. Um, but my favorite player on that list is actually Benedict Mathurin from Arizona, now in Indiana. Like, I don't think he'll win it, but I really am excited to watch him be an NBA player. Um, that dude can play on both ends of the floor. But yeah, I feel like it's Palos to go win. Um, like you said, he's kind of built for it, like himself, and he's in an organization where the type of season they're probably going to have is a lot of things are going to go through him. So he's going to have the stats probably to prove it um, and to win it. Yeah.
So next we have defensive player of the year. We have Rudy Gobert at 1, then Bam Adebayo, Robert Williams. We got Giannis, Draymond, and then Mikal Bridges. I'll let you go first on this one.
Giannis. That's who I want to win it. Um, I'm tired of this Rudy Gobert stuff, if
Okay,
I'm being
really
honest.
quick, really quick. I had a big argument about this a few years ago with somebody that I went to school with. Do you think it's fair to let big men like win defensive MVP?
Is it fair? Yeah, it's fair. Do I think that the whole list should be big guys? No. But here's the thing though, like it's tough to justify a guard or a wing winning strictly because a guard or a wing in the NBA is going to give up points.
Yeah.
But that's also the problem with it. We all know they're going to give up points. Like you can be the best wing defender in the NBA, which means you're guarding NBA superstars every single night. You're going to give up points. Like better offense beats better defense 10 times out of 10, like, because, that's just how it goes. But,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, Rudy Gobert didn't look like much of a defender when he was getting put in those switches in the playoffs. So I'm just saying, I'm just saying, yeah, he can block shots. Yeah, he can rebound. Yeah, he can guard certain positions. But Giannis can switch 1 through 5. Um,
Yeah.
Kevin Durant can switch 1 through 5. Uh, I don't know. PJ Tucker makes your defense look a lot better. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna go with Giannis on that list. Um, Gobert's good for what he is. I really do think he's a good NBA player, but
You hate
like
Gobert, dude.
I do not like Gobert. I just don't. I think he's just celebrated and he does like a couple of good things. And that's just my opinion. He affects the game a lot, but not enough to be winning awards like that. I don't know. That's my opinion on him.
I I one thing I don't want the show to be is just us just agreeing all the time, but it seems like we look at a lot of things that are very similar. I don't know what it is, and I feel bad for it, but I don't like Rudy Gobert at all. I just don't. I think it's the same thing where people think he's so good, and it's like, I get it. Like to be as tall as he is and to be effective in that way, like there's a lot of really tall people on this earth that can't do what Rudy Gobert does. I get that. But
For sure.
I just think there's a point where it's like, what else does he do? Like you're right. Like he is such a liability having to, especially in today's league. I think that kind of um, exasperates his issues as well. It's such a switch heavy league. It's such a like athletic guard driven league as well, where like if he has to do anything out of the paint, it's rough. It's really rough to watch.
For sure.
And it's hard for me to look at someone and be like defensive player of the year. You're the same person who in the playoffs people target. Like that can't I feel like that
No,
can't be
those
one
can't
and the
go hand
same.
in hand.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
can't. I got Mikal Bridges this year for my pick. I
Mhm.
think last year is a little bit going to open up the idea towards, hey, let's start looking at some defensive guard play. And he's such a good defender. He's not exactly like the stats might not always show it, but man, if you watch it, the dude's a dog, and he plays very good defense.
That's an
Yeah,
example of a really good wing defender that's going to get scored on because he's got the toughest assignment every night. Like, those guys should be on the list.
yeah,
Like, more guys like him. Yeah.
100%. Um, all right, I don't want to talk about Rudy Gobert anymore. Um, we got most improved player. So we've got Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, RJ Barrett, Zion, Jalen Brunson, and Tyrese Halliburton. Why is Zion on here? Is this just most improved? Like his
Because
body's health has improved.
he hasn't quote unquote proved anything
This
yet.
isn't the most
I don't
healthy
know.
award versus last year
Uh,
or whatever.
I don't know. It's the same thing when Ben Simmons was eligible for Rookie of the Year again. Um, I'm gonna go with Tyrese Maxey. I think he's gonna have a really big role in Philly this year. Um, and they've kind of been trying to get him to that point. Doc Rivers has been trying to get him to that point to like, hey, when you're on the floor, like be the guy. Even though they have Harden, right? Um, but I really like him kind of having like kind of just a breakout season. Um, I feel like it would be hard, and I know he's the favorite, but I feel like it would be hard for Anthony Edwards to show enough improvement
Yeah,
to based off of what he's already done
it would just
to
be
win that award.
consistency. That'd be the only difference,
Right,
right?
right. It would be the natural progression, in my opinion, because I already think that guy's going to be really good. But I feel like Maxi is one of those guys that maybe people didn't expect to have the role that he already does in the NBA.
Yeah.
And he has the opportunity to have a really big role on a playoff team this year. So that would be my pick, and I really like his game too.
Yeah, really good player. I actually am gonna change my pick. I originally was gonna pick Tyrese Halliburton, who I think is gonna have a big year this year, getting what seems like his team, getting out of that mess in Sacramento, whatever's going on down there, and getting to showcase what he has because he can do everything, and I think having a little bit more of a role in it, being a little bit more clear that it's his team because before it was kind of you're sharing the backcourt with De'Aaron Fox, and it's kind of whose is it, whatever. But I think he's gonna have a big year. But I'm gonna actually change my answer real quick. Jalen Brunson, the dude has been like
Wow.
he's what
Wow. I'm
what
shocked. I want to
really
hear your reasoning because I'm shocked.
what okay. Let me run through it
I'll
real
tell
quick.
you why after
Okay,
you say your why.
okay. I think a lot of it has to do with he's gonna be getting a lot more usage because he's not coming off the bench behind Luca anymore. I think that's gonna have a big part to do with it. He's getting the keys to that team when it's not exactly his team because RJ Barrett's there and that's kind of their guy as well. But I think he's just gonna have such a expanded role this year, and he's gonna have the chance to show his consistency. I think before where he was at, he had a great role that fit him well, coming off the bench, kind of taking over whenever Luca wasn't in the game. And then, big question around him was just obviously, is he going to be able to do this against the ones? He got like 30 minutes a game in Dallas, so it's not like he wasn't playing very much at all. So, like, he has lots of experience and has been successful against starting rotation and everything. And I think he answered a lot of questions in the playoffs last year when Luca was injured, being able to produce at a high level and obviously not being that the rotation guy to come in and get that little energy boost or whatever that people like to kind of claim the six man off the bench. But I just think it's the first time that he's been in a major contract for himself now. He's in a situation that feel like sets him up for success as well. Like he's not exactly the number one guy there, but there's a pretty good spread of talent in New York. And there's kind of an opportunity for someone to kind of take that torch, and I think it could be him. He averaged 30 minutes a game and scored like 16 and had like 5 assists a game. I think just that more focused role for him, and it was an efficient 16 as well. I'm pretty sure it was like 50% from the field. Like the dude just he when he was in, he was super effective. So I just think with the increased role and then also getting a chance to be have the offense filtered through him a little bit, that'll just give him even more opportunities to kind of expand on that role. So that's kind of my big push for Jalen Brunson. I'm curious what your big push, or not your big pushback, but your reaction was earlier to my pick of Jalen Brunson.
First of all, I'm a Jalen Brunson fan. I think he's awesome. I liked him when he was in college too at Villanova. But um, I don't know. I guess I have before I kind of like give you my why. Like, what do you think his like two-part question? What does his stat line have to look like to be most improved? And do you really think he can hit that stat line? Because if he's playing 30 minutes a game, right, and he's averaging 16 and 5, what does his stat line have to look like to be most improved player?
I guess this is like the lifelong argument of what does most improved mean. Does it mean someone who does absolutely nothing and doesn't contribute one year to gets a rotation role? Is it somebody who is um someone like Ant-Man, like you're talking about earlier for the Timberwolves, who he's played great and he's just a little bit more consistent? I think it varies from player to player, and I don't know, I think for him, uh, off the top of my head, probably averaging in like the 20 to 22 range, maybe a few more assists a game. But I think just having him in that, I don't know, I think for him, it's always been kind of like in an ideal world, you should be able to put him in a starting role and see the same result, which is an elevated status, if you will. So I guess that does kind of put him in a little bit of a tougher position because he has played really well in roles before. And it's not like he's coming from, he's getting 12 minutes a game to now he's New York is his team or whatever. So
Right.
I guess that would be the hindrance against him getting a better chance to win. But I think, yeah, I think having the opportunity to be that starter role, and then yeah, I guess just continue to contribute the way that he has, but it be in a established starting role. I think that that plays a big part.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing that he has going for him as far as this award goes. Like, if he's gonna be an established, consistent starter. So it's like a step up in his career, right? So that helps him. I think the reason that I'm kind of like, wow, like I can't believe you picked him is first of all, he's going to New York. So um, he's going to have to do big things and meet very high expectations to even satisfy the fan base, let alone like everyone else. Um, I think that's a tough place to do it. Um, that's kind of like the biggest thing for me. The other thing too is I like I hope he does. Like I hope he has a great year, right? Like I hope that he actually is in the conversation for it because I'm a fan of his individually. But um, I don't see how his stats improve that much. I feel like he's getting overpaid. So like I mean, I feel like he landed this contract off of like I don't know. I don't want to be a part of this party, but it almost feels like it was because of that one game he had in the playoffs where he scored like 41. Like he just landed like a huge deal. I feel like because of that, and I feel like if he was actually worth that much, Dallas would have tried to get him back. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like I he's got to live up to a lot of expectations that
Yeah,
people have put on him, whether they're fair or not, between the contract, between he's going to the Knicks, between now his dad's an assistant coach, between all of these different things, and he's going to a place where RJ has kind of started to establish himself a little bit, and we're putting Jalen Brunson in this. You're the New York Knicks point guard, and you are the savior to us, like sort of thing. Like that's kind of the expectation that has been put on him. Um, he's got the highest bar to reach of anyone that's on this most improved list. If I'm being honest, um, in my opinion, like I think he's got a high bar. You like if he does the same as what he did this last year, that's not good enough. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
not
that
take the award out of it. It's not good enough for um, the money. It's not good enough for the organizations. Like this dude is going into a contract into an organization where, if you want to be extreme about it, he could be making or breaking his career on this contract.
that's true.
You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I guess we're putting all our eggs in this basket with Jalen Brunson, which he's a hard worker. He's a very fundamental basketball player. He's a two-way point guard that plays both ends of the floor. He backed up one of the best players in the NBA. And so, yeah, maybe he is built for it. I hope he does, but we'll see if he's going to get chewed up and spit out over there. I guess
For
we'll
sure.
see.
For sure. And just like you're saying, I mean, so much of this comes down to perception and how other players that are in contention for this, how they play along with their team and their situation. Like every situation for this type of award is so different, and how
Yeah.
it's judged. And um, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, because especially when you get paid, it's very easy to look at, oh, you get paid more than this guy, or you're getting paid more than this person and you didn't live up to expectations. That's a really easy way to it's a really easy like point to, oh, bigger number, and then like look at your averages. It's kind of an easy way to judge it, from a fan's perspective, if you will.
Hmm.
And I mean, but in the same light, kind of in some of the things that you're saying earlier about being in New York, like, can you imagine him dropping 40 in a playoff game in New York? Like,
For sure.
so
For sure.
one and the same, because like you do something in Dallas, it's viewed very different than, and like like the Knicks win one playoff game and they tear the city to shreds. It seems like after that. So
They gotta make the playoffs.
it's true, and you're right. So I think New York has a more extreme effect to whatever happens. Obviously, if they don't play well,
Right,
it's fire everybody, who cares? But in the opposite effect, they win one playoff game, it's like, dude, RJ's the best player in the universe. Like all this
right,
kind of stuff where if he like say they make it to the playoffs and like who knows, like what if they win a series? Like they're one of those teams where like defensively because the players that they have and because of the coach that they have, they're gonna be just a dog defensively. Like that's just what their
right,
team's gonna be. Um, maybe and there are those players where they don't play well in that support role that they need to be in a system that's maybe not made for them, but they're at least given the confidence and the opportunity to shine. And like that could be him as well. So like while I don't expect him to go there and be in contention for the MVP race, he could be a guy who really lights it up. And honestly, it could just be New York just is wanting just another lefty on their team. It could be it. They're just trying to stack up
true.
a roster full of lefties. It was funny. I was looking at some stuff earlier about it. I was like, why out of like for if there's sort of like a high school team or like a middle school team, dude, having three scoring lefties that's a weapon. Obviously, this
That's
is not
funny.
that league, but it is kind of interesting having that many lefties on one team. But yeah,
That's
so
true.
there's our
Do
thoughts
you
on
think,
that. Go ahead.
uh I had this conversation with people before, like, because New York has, I mean, this is off topic, okay? But New York has clearly had trouble um, getting free agents there over the last several years. So they've chosen to invest in like Brunson and RJ Barrett and re-signing Mitchell Robinson. And I don't even remember the exact stat, but like I think RJ and Mitchell Robinson are like they're like the only two rookies that the Knicks have re-signed over like so so many years or something like that, which is kind of a crazy stat. But I had this conversation with someone and they were like, "Man, Brunson got overpaid," and which I agree with, but at the same time, don't they have to pay someone? Like, they do have to pay someone, right? If they want to get some of these guys might be getting contracts that maybe you wouldn't expect them to get somewhere else, but no one's been wanting to go there. Like, no one has gone there. So they got to pay for something, right? I don't feel like they have a superstar. I wouldn't consider Brunson and RJ guys that are going to fulfill this NBA superstar role. Like, neither of them are probably even going to be all stars. And so it's just kind of one of those things of like, okay, I guess they're investing in, I don't know, mid to upper tier players in the NBA. I wonder if it will pay off for them. I guess is what I'm trying to get to. Like, is this going to pay off for them? Are the Knicks going to be relevant? I I don't know. They're not on anyone's list that we didn't talk about them earlier in the pod about like sleepers or anything. But they got like these three dudes plus Randall that they're paying for. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
still not relevant. So it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. And it's crazy to me that a market like that, I think a lot of it has to do with like the ownership and all of that too. But
Big time.
the Knicks cannot get anyone good, which is just crazy. It's like the basketball mecca. They can't get any like NBA superstars. So, you know, hopefully like guys like Barrett and Brunson and Robinson and Randall, like they can make something of it and live up to it. They're getting an opportunity, that's for sure. And if they make an opportunity of it, then they'll be household names forever. So, um, yeah, it's just really interesting. Like, we didn't grow up in an era where the Knicks were relevant, like the best Knicks that we've seen were
Mellow.
like mellow and like
Yeah.
they were winning like maybe one playoff series and that was it. But like we haven't ever seen, like we weren't around when they were good and like, the 90s and stuff and playing in the playoffs and all that. So just it's really interesting. Like we've never actually got to experience that. Um, I don't know. I know that's super off topic, but it's just weird to talk about. Like it's like the
Yeah.
biggest market in basketball, and these dudes like are not successful.
Yeah. I mean, by far the best era of Knicks basketball was Lynn Sanity. I think that's, hands down. That was one of the
That's true.
most
I can't
insane
forget
things.
that. I can't forget that. That was wild. A couple
That
weeks.
was
Those are like amazing weeks.
that run was unbelievable. Um that's a whole different it's a whole different pod. But yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to look at what they're doing and really be like, yes, this is the formula. I think their only chance, at least like in the near future, is um even though yes, it is New York, it is the Knicks, which usually that would have a little bit of a pull on some free agents to go there and play. I think just because their actual on the court play hasn't really reflected what the idea of playing in New York City would be like. There's a little bit of a tax in having to go play there, like for the owners to pay them. It's like, hey, if we're gonna put anything together, we're gonna have to overpay some people to like
Right.
convince people to get here. So it's I think really what they're at now is like if you look at their cast, it's not terrible by any means, but yeah, like you're saying, like there's no all-stars on that team. And maybe one of them sneaks in if somebody plays really well and there's a lot of
Right. Right.
injuries, but
Maybe one does.
yeah, that's a pretty far cry there. But I think their best chance at this point is like having this current team be just a really solid like supporting cast to getting a superstar. And that's obviously like the biggest hurdle that they have to get is getting that superstar that fits with that team that actually wants to play in New York, which is like that's the toughest thing. And I don't know
Right.
exactly what it is, but you would think that eventually there's got to be someone who's thinking like I just need my own team to show people what I can do. And it might be like you know, somebody who might be from New York, somebody who might be, just at the moment doesn't have any other good options for a team to be like, that's the team that I want to take over and lead to the promised land. Like it could just be like, well, now's my time to strike, and New York happens to be the best supporting cast they have available. That's like really their only chance. So I think they're really going to
Right.
have to bite the bullet and pay that luxury tax and just overpay people like crazy for a few years to like hopefully reestablish some culture, hopefully lay the groundwork of success. And then that's when you start buying into it's New York City, the Mecca, like, the history of New York and all this kind of a thing. But that's like their best chance. I don't see any other way because they're clearly not very good at drafting. They're just not. Um,
And unfortunately, I feel like they have to do it through the draft because it's like not saying that these guys wouldn't be a part of some great trade package in the future, but now you got like these few guys that have crazy contracts. And so it's like our team is going to be wanting to, or willing to take those things on. Like I feel like they've kind of chosen like this is our core for the next handful of years and we got to go with it sort of thing. So I don't know. I haven't really looked. I'd be interested to kind of see what like outside of their top 4 or 5 guys being paid, like I wonder what the rest of the contracts look like if they're like 1 year contracts or um, like do they have flexibility in the off season still over the next handful of years? It's just kind of
yeah,
interesting
that would be interesting to look at. I'm also interested to see how Obi Toppin develops. I don't think he's
for sure.
I don't think he's like on the brink of superstardom, but I think there's flashes where it's like you could
He's fun to watch
yeah, he's fun to watch and he could definitely contribute. Um okay, last thing that we're going to talk about as far as awards is the Six Man of the Year award.
mm,
Number one, we have Jordan Poole, we have Norman Powell, Tyler Hero, Christian Wood, Malcolm Brogdon, and Nashawn Highland, who I'm going to be honest, I don't know who that is.
That's Bones Highland is what they call him. He plays in Denver. He's a
Hmm.
point guard. Yeah, super skinny dude, super slight, really fast guy.
Okay. Be honest, I don't know. I just can't picture who that is. But anyway, one more time, we got Jordan Poole, Norman Powell, Tyler Hero, Christian Wood, Malcolm Brogdon, and then Nashawn Highland or Bones.
Um, hmm. Well, the very first one's interesting, Poole, because it's like, does he stay on the bench all season? Like, you know what I mean? He,
Probably. I mean, unless Clay gets injured again, I don't because I mean, this is okay.
yeah,
Really quick switch up before we get back into this. Is Andrew Wiggins maybe the most like how the heck did he become an all-star starter last year? Like he gets
yeah.
no he and like even whether if it was warranted or not at this point, nobody gives him any respect as a player on that level. It's
Dude,
amazing how quick it's
his
crazy.
career was like almost down the trash can, like when he was in Minnesota. Like he was just playing
Yeah.
on a crappy team. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe he still didn't live up to what people would hope for a number one pick and all that, but the dude earned his paycheck last season and through the postseason. Like, I like that seems very well deserved.
Yeah,
He was a huge reason as to why they made their run. Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
I don't know. Um, yeah, that's true. He he was an all-star starter. I think that's a whole nother thing. I think the all-star voting is stupid, the way that they do it. But yeah, it's just because it's like a popularity contest, basically.
Yeah. All right.
I
Go ahead.
if Jordan Poole is actually going to come off the bench, which I think you're right, he probably will with a healthy Clay and their typical lineup, right? Um, I feel like that's like a clear favorite. Um,
Yeah.
but my sleeper in that lineup is Malcolm Brogdon. Um, I think that he is like first of all, I think Boston is set to have a really good season again.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it'd be interesting to see how they do with the coaching adjustment, obviously. But I think that's a really good pickup for them. Um, I think Brogdon's going to be on TV a lot more. I know it sounds funny, but he hasn't played a lot of national television basketball
Makes a big
when
difference.
he's been in the NBA, right? So he's going to have the exposure, um, which means if he's performing, then he's going to get media coverage, and then he's talked about more, and that's all a trickle down effect. So um, I feel like Brogdon is kind of my sleeper. I know he's kind of low on that list, but that would kind of be my guy besides Poole. I think Poole is the clear cut favorite though. Um, but yeah, Brogdon, if not him.
For some reason, I thought Brogdon would have been a starter. They still have. Is it because they have Smart in that point guard role still?
Yeah, yeah, probably. Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because if Smart is still the starter, that means off the bench you have Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and Malcolm Brogdon. Like you're very, like they're very point guard
Yeah.
heavy off the bench. Like they're very 1-2 combo guard heavy off the bench.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
I don't know, they're just deep. Like that team is deep. So
Yeah, they are. Um, for this one, I'm going Tyler Hero. I think that
yeah,
six man of the year award often turns into who can score the most points off the bench award every year. For a variety of reasons. But I think as far as like actual effect on a game, I would agree with you as far as Malcolm Brogdon goes or Jordan Poole. Because Brogdon is exactly what we hit on during the playoffs that we thought Celtics needed. A point guard who's a point guard type of guy
right.
rather than Marcus Smart, who obviously is special in his role, but there's a certain level of um playoff execution and even just good basketball execution that really requires a point guard who can really distribute. He's a really good defender, and he does everything that you want a point guard to do, and does
Yeah,
everything really well. Has no glaring weakness. May not be absolutely stellar at anything in particular, but just a guy who won't turn the ball over and does everything right. So I think as far as like actual basketball effect on the game, Malcolm Brogdon's probably getting that one for me. But I mean they just paid Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero is just an absolute flamethrower off the bench, and usually it turns into um, whichever guy comes off the bench and averages the most points is usually what
for
I think
sure.
happens. And I think he's just set up well there.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, that's literally his role. Come in to kind of just be that spark off the bench and score points. I feel like he's also kind of gotten thrown into like um, almost like a point guard type of role off the bench, which I wasn't really expecting. But he handles the ball a lot when he's in the game,
Yeah.
um, which makes for an interesting role and dynamic when he's also out there to score the ball. So um, yeah, that's a good pick too.
Yeah. Um, that's it for season awards. Do you have any other storylines that you're fascinated in this year before we wrap this thing up?
Hmm. I guess just like I don't know, it's like cliche almost, but do the Warriors get another championship sort of thing? Like is how long is this dynasty gonna go?
Yeah.
Um I like my bold prediction, I guess it's probably not that bold, but my bold prediction is I think Milwaukee makes it back to the finals. Um I feel like
Really going out on a limb there.
I know, right? It's
I'm just
crazy.
kidding.
I've said this on here before. I feel like they would have been in the finals with a healthy Middleton. I don't think
Yeah,
Boston would have won that series.
I agree.
Um, but yeah, I just like I don't know. For some weird reason, I feel like Giannis is like not being talked about, and I don't know why. Um, it's like that guy has dramatically continued to improve every season. So it's kind of like, what is it going to be this year? Is he going to be even better from three? Is he just going to be like lights out from the free throw line? Like, what is it? Yeah, I don't know. I think Warriors are the favorite once again, but I kind of like Milwaukee coming out of the East. I just feel like Boston might have a little bit of a letdown, even with how loaded they are. Um, and I'm also just kind of interested to see if Philly can make a push. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. But my prediction is like early season before the season starts is Warriors Bucks in the finals, which at the beginning of the playoffs last year, I think that was my prediction. So, uh, yeah, I'm gonna keep it the same for now. Warriors Bucks. Ask me again in like a couple months and see if I have a different answer. But
For sure. Um,
do you? Okay, I have a question for you
okay.
because I'm a Laker fan. And I don't know if people on here know that, but I grew up a Laker fan. Like I grew up a huge Kobe Bryant fan. I was kind of influenced to be a Laker fan. I haven't always been the biggest LeBron fan. But at the same time, like you have to appreciate greatness. Um, but it's been tough to be a Laker fan, even when they won the 2020 championship, which definitely has an asterisk next to it because of the all the rest that they got. I don't know if the Lakers win that year if there wasn't the 4 months rest involved. But do the Lakers have the same core at the trade deadline? And my answer before you answer is I hope not. I pray that they don't. Like they suck, Josh.
Yeah. Mm. I If I were to bet on it, I would bet not. Um,
Okay. Okay,
I
so who's gone?
I mean, I think the glaring obvious one is Russ. I don't. I just I said this last year when they made the push for him. I think there's a clear track record to success with LeBron James. I think it's you have Another winger forward with him that is dynamic and can score and makes it so he doesn't have to do everything. And then you just load up with shooters. Like,
Yeah,
how many of the biggest moments and how many championships are supported by him being around guys like Ray Allen, Mike Miller, like these types of dudes, or like all the shooters that they had in Cleveland. Like you need shooting around LeBron. You just do. And I it right as soon as that trade happened, it was like, who the heck, like who's shooting the ball for them? Like,
right,
and
right.
it's not like they don't have anyone who can hit a shot, but there's a difference between
No,
being
they don't. They don't. They don't.
okay, they don't.
They don't. I think
Yeah,
Reeves can shoot, but I think literally I think I saw the stat. I have to double check it. But I think the highest 3-point percentage returning, not even returning, that had the highest percentage last year was Pat Bev. Are you freaking kidding me?
it does
Dude,
say
I
on Pat
watched
Bet.
part of the not from 3, he
I'm
has a
kidding.
role, but that's not it.
Okay.
I watched part of their preseason game against the Timberwolves the other day, and I'm sitting there. We're in our coach's office. I'm watching the game, okay? And I'm, like, talking to one of our other coaches, and I'm like, "You've gotta be kidding me. These guys can't shoot." And it was brick after brick after brick in the first quarter. They started the game, like, 1 for 13 from 3, and they kept putting them up. It's like, "Can someone please go to the basket on this team?" It's just bad, and it's just, like,
Yeah.
it's hard to watch, because I don't feel like they've done a good job from a team building standpoint. Like, I don't feel like, yeah, they haven't built the team well, around LeBron. As it stands right now, like, there's been no proof that it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Like, everything that we've seen last year and even through preseason right now, and I know it's preseason, but, like, nothing has even given a glimpse of hope for this team to even be a playoff team, and that's ridiculous.